Okay, so let me start with this ICO, International Coffee Organization, quote about how we need to improve quality. So of course, it's a crucial aspect that we need to achieve in the, not only in the long term, but also every day. And with the quality improvement programs, what we need to be careful or to be aware of is especially food safety. This is really my concern from my point of view, living in origin, and also working closely to different producers, especially small producers. This is something that I really need to focus on with this talk. So just for you to remember, we have some standards related to the moisture content and especially defect count in green grading, right? So for ICO, we have this 12.5%, no more than that, not exceeding that, and not falling below 8%, and having 550 defects per 300 gram samples for Arabic, for a Robusta in this case, sorry. Again, this is just an introduction to understand how we have another standards, international standards. We have our own regulations or standards in origin, and how we need to approach that to understand the quality of the green coffee. So with that said, let me start with factors that we all know that are affecting the green coffee quality. Of course, we have genetics, not only related to the species, lineages or varieties, but of course also cultivars, if we understand the difference between those. Ecology, or all the different regions and aspects that are influenced. Of course, we are let's say, located in the tropical region, but depending on the latitude, of course, we are going to have different conditions. Also, we need to take into account the climate, weather conditions, not only the weather, but precipitations, how many hours of luminosity we have during the day, etc. And of course, with the climate change nowadays. And of course, also the cultural approach, not only related to different plants of how you are reading their fertilization, pruning, or how we need to control pests and diseases. And all of this is in the end what we call, or this word that we are bringing for the wine industry, that is called terroir. So with all that, considering this in the coffee processing, or in general, in how this is affecting the green quality, processing indeed is one of the main aspects that now is affecting not only the visual or the appearance of the coffee, but indeed the final flavor profile. And again, my concern is about how we need to, in the industry, really focus on safety, and how we are going to, let's say, how to control how producers are actually processing the coffee that we are consuming. In the end, I always say that we are all consumers. So this is why this is so important. Yes, let's start with the odor and color. This is the main or the aspect, the principal aspect that we start with when we are grading or classifying our green coffee. For odor, we just said in origin, when we are just in the quality control, that this is clean or not clean. And when it's not clean, we probably are referring that this coffee is smelling like jute, or is baggy, or even like fertilizer, etc. I'm talking, of course, embracing not only commercial, but of course specialty coffee. So this is the first analysis that we need to do. I'm going to refer to how some of the current standards, even the forms, are not including this. And it's important that we also notice that in the color scales, we are going to have different ways to define the color of the green. And actually we can have this whitish or more light brown scale, depending, of course, on the processing. If it's not the same talking about wash or honey or just natural coffees. Of course, I'm talking just simplifying the processing that we have now, and we all know this. or the poultry naturals that we have in Brazil, for example, as one of the naturals at the main processing for them. But also, let me take my example as a Colombian for wash processes. So when we define this color scale, yes, it's just visual appearance. Probably we are just checking that box in the form, but there is no other aspect that we need to evaluate behind that. So with that said, we can have some problems in the color of the bean. And nowadays, let's say that color is not a parameter that we are just using for rejecting, let's say, coffees. Actually, if we are exporting coffees, for example, in Colombia, many years ago, when we started producing naturals, of course, not even in the color of the parchment, we were meeting our regulation. So yes, these coffees, let's say that they can be exported, and actually they are exported, but they cannot have like the reference in our case from the Colombian Coffee Federation in terms of that they are meeting a uniformity or they are meeting a specific color. What factors can affect this decoloration? Let's say, of course, high moisture content that is related to probably not only an improper drying process, but also an improper storage that is also related to the relative air humidity, luminosity, of course, during all these processes, high temperatures, and others that are related to mechanical damage and that are part of other unit operations that we perform before the coffee is exported. So from, let's say, a normal bean that you can see on the screen, we can get in the end whitish bean or really not proper beans in order to be roasted. What is the other aspects? Of course, moistures and water activity. It's interesting that even nowadays, moisture is like the main aspect that we relate to the water content that is present in our food matrix, that in our raw material, that in the end is the green bean. Yes, we know that moisture is, as I was saying, for example, for ICO in general, no more than 12.5%, or if you, that is actually the same for the Colombian internal regulations. But if you take a look of the standards in terms of the specialty coffees, we know that this cannot be higher than 12. The range is 10 to 12, as we all know. And the water activity that I remember actually 1 year ago when Sustainable Harvest gave us an amazing presentation about this parameter. It's interesting to see how in the, I would say, the 8 or even probably more, but especially in the 5 years, how this parameter is being considered by roasters. And I say by roasters because in many origin countries, unfortunately, we don't have all the tools, actually the instrument to actually measure this parameter. So both of them are, of course, related, and the discussion is still on the table to see if moisture can just give the real information about the quality or just an indicator of the quality of the coffee, but also is important to understand also the water activity is needed to that, and to understand again the quality of the coffee. We have again some different ways to measure these parameters. Remember that moisture is just the amount of water, simplifying, present in any food matrix. Our raw material, our food matrix in this case, is the green bean. We have specific methodologies. We have direct methods, as we know. We have the ISO standards, especially the 1446 and the 6673. All of them are references to measure the moisture content based on oven methods, just drying the coffee and then giving the specific number for this parameter. And those methods are actually used to calibrate the electronic, let's say, machine that are based on electrical characteristics of the green bean. So we have different brands, as you can see, and of course we are super familiar with all of this, not only in origin, but of course in let's say in the consuming countries. So more than saying that this moisture content is a parameter that we need to consider, it is important to understand that we need to have calibrated our equipments. And I have seen many, when I travel to different origins, not only here. Unfortunately, what we are lacking is maintenance, and we have actually another presentation about this for roasters, but in general, in the industry, not only for coffee, but in food, in labs, what we need to understand is that we need to maintain our equipment and calibrate those in order to have a good response. If you, just as you can see on the screen, if you have a coffee that is giving an instrument or a machine that is giving you a percentage of 11, and in the reality is 8.4 or vice versa, of course, this distortion in the real numbers is not giving you the real parameter. Therefore, you can have wrong information. The quality of the coffee in this case is definitely not the same. So you can have a variation even from 1 to 3%. And actually, yes, here you have an idea also how the correct calibration must be for all these parameters. But regarding the water activity, please let me remind you what does water activity means. What is the water that is free or unbound available for all the microorganisms in order to grow. And this is related to, in the end, to deterioration or to food safety. I was saying before that this is on the table because I know for some people in the industry, probably moisture content will be enough, or probably because we don't have the access, especially again in origin, to really have machines or equipments with their good accuracy. So probably you can get a specific water activity meter in, let's say, cheap, but definitely if you need to work in consistency, again, and let me take that word from the previous presentation, you have to have the good equipment, good maintenance, and definitely a quality controller behind you. Probably this is what we are lacking in the coffee industry in general. So with that said again, okay, I have the equipment before. I do think that we definitely need to work with both parameters, moisture and water activity. I don't want to have or let apart the water activity, because in other food matrices that I have been studying during my years as a food engineer, definitely is a parameter that we need to consider to relate to quality. Another aspect that we need to consider in the green grading, sorry about that, okay, is the defect count. I'm not pretending to give you a green grading class, but it's important to highlight again or to remember what are the primary or group 1 or category 1 defects that we are actually evaluating when we are doing green grading classification. So of course, we need to start with the total black and its corresponding partial black. We know that we can have different origins for this one. The Chinese and the mate black are not the same. So you can have agricultural origin for the Chinese, but also improper storage for what we call the mate or the green black, especially, for example, in Brazil, that this is part of their own regulations. Fungus, of course, or cardenillo, that is called actually in Colombia, in Spanish, of course. That definitely is affecting or giving you a specific defect that we know that's mold in a cup. But more than that, please, I want to give you a parenthesis here to talk about the importance of grading or to recognizing the defects. Probably in the photo you are seeing, yes, this is definitely a fungus. And of course, if I see this green bean on a 300 or 500 sample, 350 gram green sample, I can really recognize it. With, let me tell you that this is not as easy or as simple as it looks, because traveling again and working with producers and quality control managers, especially in origin or even roasters or importers, when you are receiving a coffee with a specific control, probably many of you are not aware of all the real, let's say, quality or the real effects that we can get. I'm not saying that all people are not aware of that. I'm saying that the real life, I have been found that we are not able to recognize many of the defects. So probably green grading is just like something or sorting defects, but people say, okay, in the end, the capping is the tool that we have to accept or reject coffees. And I would say that it's not, again, it's not simple as that. Of course, we have to meet a contract, and definitely we have aspects that are not really met in the contract. Of course, we can have in the end or reject these coffees, but in the real life of a daily control quality manager in origin, those aspects need to be considered to have more, I would say, training. Another defect beans that we all know, I would continue with the sour because of their impact in the coffee quality. And of course, the immatures that we all know are related to the probably non-selective harvest. And it's super interesting because, as we know, also they are the main accepted theory about the origin of the Quakers. And this is another thing that is on the table for discussion. We have the immature beans, Euros, when you are getting a lot of this, and in the end you are getting a lot of Quakers, again, not only being the main source for this, but not only the source for this, but the main probably. This is something that we also need to consider. And again, talking about consistency, this aspect needs to be analyzed. Of course, we have others like insect damage being, depending on the country, the climate, etc. We can have some harvest or years when we can have those more. But again, if we are just meeting the contract, it's part of the challenges, of course, of the producer in order to avoid this kind of affectioning. It's not only about analyzing green coffee, but also considering the economic losses that we can have due to the presence of defective beans. I was saying that probably immature beans in countries like Brazil, thinking about commercial coffee with this volume and all the non-selective harvest or stripping that I can have, definitely we can have a lot of immatures that in the end is representing high losses. If I have here this example, in every 1,000 bags, you can see how many bags I can have as a loss, depending on the percentage of immatures that are present. Just going from 5 to 25%, you can see the difference of that. Another aspect to consider, and also the effect of temperature of these technical aspects that in the end are reflected in the green bean. We have here a range between 30 and 60 Celsius, and how these are generated in the end, what we call mate or black green defects. And again, look at how ranging from around 2% to really 100% of black green defects can be actually be generated with high or extreme temperatures, especially during the drying process, or even if this is performed on patios or if it's performed on mechanical drying. Again, Brazil would be the example here. Remember that we have 40 Celsius as the safe number in processing to avoid the death of the embryo. And if we consider that the green bean is a live entity, definitely this is one point that we have been working in quality for the last year, especially again in these differentiated coffees, to understand also not only the quality but the shelf life of our final product. And I haven't seen really not too many studies related to all these trends in processing and how this is affecting the shelf life. And I will mention this at the end of the presentation, because this is one of the questions that I want to leave here for all not only the panelists that I'm sure they can contribute to the Q&A section, but of course all you attendees to really understand what is happening now. Just another photo to see the different defective beans that we can get. And talking about this, again, drying process, this decoloration that I was talking about before is important. I want to highlight on this because I will mention the current SEA standard for specialty coffee. When we analyze the category 1 and category 2 defects, if we are basing a contract on this or just having this as a reference. Actually, SEA is not really the 100% of the reference for specialty coffee contracts. It is not, but it's definitely the reference. The question that we, or the aspect that we have been discussing lately is why not all the defective beans coming from an improper drying process are included in the SEA. And probably Puri Giuliano, even though he will be talking about assessment of the coffee in terms of probably capping. Of course, this is related to that. So all these wheatish or what we call in Spanish reposados or other type of beans that, as you can see on the photo, are related to a bad processing, are not included in many of the regulations. So this is something to take into account. Other strange or foreign matter that we can have, of course, the stone, clothes, sticks, depending on the country. When I talk to my friends, I mean, roasters, importers, etc., I know that, for example, not being the only country, but stones is a common thing in many of our origins. And of course, we have others that are placed as a category 1 or category 2, like dry cherry pots or just parchment or whole host fragments that can be considered as part of defects. So with this idea of the defective beans that we can have in a green sample that in the end is representing a lot when we have those for analysis, this is just an example of the bean coffee classification related to the defects. Of course, the poster is in Spanish, defectos del café, coffee defects, and we have 14. We categorize them in group 1 and group 2, of course, depending how they are affecting in the end the final flavor profile. We have some of them that are matching, let's say, or that they are in the same category as the ones that SEA has, for example, in the international standards, or some of them that are in the Brazil regulation, and of course in other countries, let's say in Africa, etc. And even though some of them are category 1 and others are considered category 2, depending on the standards, we understand that here in the Colombian regulation, we have a specific, as you can see, all of them are one bean is making you a one equivalent or fault. And also we had those references to understand where is the origin of that specific defective bean and how it's affecting the final flavor profile. Our regulation is for having a moisture content no more than 12.5%. And this is important because it's actually a little higher if I compare with the ASEA standard. This is what I'm here talking, let's say, as a Q instructor, definitely we consider, because for Arabica evaluation, we are following the current standards. I'm sure we are working together to analyze and to improve, or probably review, let's say, better the current standards, not only for green graded, but again, for how we assess coffee in terms of capping or sensory evaluation. So for you to remind you, the coffee or the green coffee defect posters, the one that you are seeing here, have 6 category 1 defects and 10 category 2 defects. What is interesting, and I always emphasize on, nowadays we only have a specific standard, and I always say that this, like the last name, is not just Arabica, now is for washed Arabica. Before 2018, we always have these standards, probably the poster, there was an update about that, but it was only like for Arabica, and we didn't have that word about wash or now that we have honey, now that we have natural coffees, and now that we have thousands of names for processing. So therefore, the current standards are only for washed Arabica. That means that there are some parameters or aspects that are being evaluated in samples that are necessarily applying. If you take a look at the green coffee color, of course, if you classify the color as greenish or, well, let's say blue, green, etc., depending, of course, here probably not actually the processing, but if you consider this is for wash, it's not the same habit as a green or greenish or a yellow pale coffee, if you are analyzing actually yellow honey, for example. So this is why we are saying that now color is not a parameter for rejecting a coffee. So we are just marking on a scale, right? Yes, this is an important tool, but definitely that will be my last slide. What we need in coffee, and I'm sure we have been working on that, and probably this year, or I do hope soon we can also have an update on this, because it's absolutely necessary to understand again the quality of the coffee. Also, the washed Arabica coffee grade being formed that is used when you are having this as a reference for a specific contract. What we are missing here is other, when we did the transition between or when SCI did the update, other is not included there. Of course, it's in origin, but I always say that even though it seems like the basic or simplest parameter to analyze, other should be included in all our forms. So definitely that has to be to consider. Remember that again, here we have a range from 10 to 12. And if you are in origin, of course, you have to say, or to talk to your producers, let's focus on just a narrow range between 10.8 to 11.2, depending on your conditions, because your coffee is going to be a storage, you have the product is going to reach the humidity, the equilibrium humidity, etc., all the aspects that are going to influence on how not only the storage need to be performed, but also how this is impacting in the end the shelf life. And in 2018, also, for the very first time in these international standards given by SCA, the water activity was included. Nowadays, this parameter, according to these standards, cannot be higher than 0.7. Of course, it's the limit that we know when all the microorganisms start to grow, but we know that others can start growing with lower activity water. I do think it was an important step in the specialty coffee industry, having these standards given by SCA, specialty for Arabica. But definitely we have been working with other ranges in the, let's say, in the real trading or in the real market. And again, if I mention the great presentation that we had last year about the activity water, and if you have been reading the documents about not only, yes, the sustainable harvest at the time of coffee imports or others, fortunately actors that are actually researching on this, we know that we should be in another range. So it was important to have, for the very first time, this introduced as a standard, but definitely we need to update some of the parameters that we have here. So let me give you some examples with photos of the physical appearance of coffee from traditional methods first. And this is, let's say, that we have been here in origin when we are about to export, or when your roasters, importer roasters, are having as a raw material. Our final product is this green bean, but then it comes to you as your raw material, right? So here, let's start with East Africa. Those are real examples from companies in Europe, located in Europe, that are receiving these kind of samples, okay? So in this case, I'm using the real, again, country and variety and the processing. So on your left, you have the Rwanda Bourbon, fully washed. Definitely, you can, this is a uniform coffee, you can define the color, you apart you will be measuring the moisture, the water activity, density, etc. But definitely, let's say that in appearance, it looks uniform. But if you have the same Rwanda Bourbon, but now with honey, I'm sure you have been experimenting this, of course, when this started some years ago. Of course, you can have a light brown silver skin, do it to the processing. Yes, and that's, let's say, okay, we can accept that, or this is what we are accepting because we don't have an international standard saying, yes, all the honey coffees coming from this specific yes, process, or this specific processing will have this specific color, right? So I was just highlighting with the red circles how these different beans can be to your, or the visual appearance will be, of course, different. If I compare, this is not the same Ethiopia, but we have Ethiopia Yirgashev, grade 2, also wash, great in uniformity, and also these have this natural, probably but with the photo we can also see that this Guji grade 1, it could have some of the silver skin with different colors. But let's say that we are in this range of traditional methods that probably is not challenging for the roasters to perform the processing. And actually Scott was saying that even though we have this Colombia wash or natural, we should be thinking about the consistency in terms of how we are going to have this, the best, have the best of the machine and your expertise as a roaster to highlight the profile of this coffee with these characteristics, right? Kenya also, we have this wash. Of course, we can see some defects that are part of the, let's say, I can analyze with the SEA wash Arabica coffee form, having some probably partial sours or broken, etc. But if you have this natural, yes, we can see that there is no uniformity. And this is the first point that again, it's been there for years, but probably we need to start giving some standards when we have these processes. If I go to Indonesia, we have this Sumatra withhold of, we know that here let's say that the highest issue is the mechanical damage due to the holding process when the naked bean is in high temperature, and of course the color here, even though the process could start as a wash coffee, probably we can say here that this is a bluish or blue-green coffee instead of saying that it's greenish or green. Absolutely. Different islands, so as you can see, Indonesia anyway, Sumatra and Flores, probably the same aspect, and since we know the wet hold process, probably this is what we are actually expecting from that, right? And in origin, again, we all have our regulations, but in the end, if we have as a reference international standards, this is another process that should be or need to be considered. Let's talk about Central America, or let's see better pictures about that. We have this Streeter Harbin HB Costa Rica wash again. Probably the coffee that we are used to, even though we know Costa Rica, of course, or they are really recognizing in this century, let's say, really starting in this century with the honey coffee. This is marketed as a yellow honey by the processor or by the producer. Again, with some silver skin, like silver skin, that, believe me, that it can sound like it's simple, but it's not simple. Many quality control managers in origin confuse this silver skin with sour beans. And if you think about, even though you are going to have control after that, after holding, with all this classification during the holding process, we need to really understand how we are evaluating coffee in origin, how we are really understanding and categorizing the beans in the correct classification. And again, I have been seeing, not only because I'm teaching this, how you need to grade coffee, but also in the real life, that is what is important for us. Continuing with Central America, we have this Guatemala wash, this Marango Jipe wash as well, and this Antigua Pastoral, all of them wash again. With this, we can definitely sort it, the defective beans, considering the current standards. But if I go to South America, okay, well, this is still wash, interesting, but I will start with something here. Colombia was also, but my previous panelist, and we have here wash, right? On your left, we have probably this could be a Caturra. We have this pink Bourbon, interesting, and I have in here these quotation marks to cold wash, but the processor or producer is called cold wash. And we have this interesting 200 hours anaerobic wash. Of course, I would say this trend in having all these difference in processing with these anaerobic processes, and I'm just saying that because of course we now are reevaluating the concept of fermentation. If the concept of fermentation was already given by Louis Pasteur as air without oxygen, or life, sorry, without oxygen or without air. Now we are, let's say that we have been performing, for example, for countries like Colombia, all the time, we were doing in open system having aerobic fermentations. So now that we have to come back to understand the concept of fermentation, yes, now we have to name or to say again that this is an aerobic process, just to emphasize that probably we are using a closed system, right? So 200, yes, is, when we started with this again 5 years ago, probably we were saying, how can we perform a fermentation in 200 hours? But now we have people saying 300, 350 using lixiviates or mosto, well, the word that we use from the wine industry, the juice that is coming from this anaerobic process, etc. We probably in the photo with this case is not really notorious. Probably again you can check the box of the color of the bean, but what is behind that? What is behind this process that is really affecting or really changing the profile of that coffee? So yes, we were in this traditional, even though I have this last example with these extended fermentations, right? This is what, let's say, the real life for many of the specialty roasters, right? We have here a purple Caturra, passion fruit fermentation, while some are calling in-fruit fermentation. I can be here talking for days about these processes. But what I want to highlight, or versus these lactic natural, definitely there is no uniformity. And again, it's not the first time that you see these photos or the first time that you are roasting probably these coffees. But what we need to really understand is, are we accepting these coffees because we are just having a specific sensory profile that my customer is going to pay really, really, high prices for this? But are we considering the safety aspects of having these kind of processes? Those could be, let's say, natural, but not natural about process. When I say natural fermentation, or probably spontaneous, that is another word that we can use, spontaneous fermentations, where we are just, yes, inducing a specific metabolic pathway, but definitely not using external agents to that specific fermentation. That is another case. So yes, we have, with this wash, even we have silver, this light brown silver skin. Why? Of course, because probably more than being just adding fruits, that is another trend right now that actually we need to really to put this on the table for discussing in the coffee industry. Well, let's say that we accept this term. Definitely, this coffee could actually be placed in a bin, again in a closed environment for many hours, or not only after pulping, because this is called wash, but probably just in free fermentation. I mean the coffee cherries or the coffee fruit for some hours, right? So this color is there. So I can definitely say that this is not only in passion free fermentation, but definitely there was an in free fermentation of the coffee fruit, the coffee cherry. And with this lacting natural, the same, probably extended fermentation. This is the aspect that we have, right? Yes, some free fermentations again. Those are real photos, as you can see, and real names that the processors are giving us. So this is what we have all in quotation marks. Yes, here we have. And this is my question or my concern, or this is what I really want to talk about in the Q&A with you roasters. When you are receiving this, and again, this is probably the real life for a specialty coffee, not only company here in origin, but also if you are into these coffees as a roaster. If you just take or just look at the coffee, probably you're gonna reject these coffees, especially the one on the left. And I know cases, and I know really cases, specific examples or producers that they have been sent their samples to different companies, big companies, famous or well-known companies, roasters, and definitely they are saying, no, I'm not going to even roast your sample. I don't even want to try, because if I'm not going to accept this green coffee as my raw material for roasting. Well, this is exactly what we need to regulate. Is this proper for the industry? Are we accepting these coffees for in the industry? Are we researching on that to see what is being here? Hot fermentation is one of the names for these processes that in the end we have these results, and many others, hydro natural, wash coffee, gold wash coffee, IPA style coffee, etc., etc. Of course, this is the start. We, as a consumer, I always say, not even as a professional or with a specific expertise in coffee, I have to say that sometimes I get like amazed or surprised, if I can use that word, because I really have to think about what I'm drinking. With all these names, that let's say that there are names as producers, because probably they can have the right to name their coffee, but definitely as a consumer, I don't like to be challenged, let's say, to imagine or to infer or to deduce or to speculate what was the process before. Not only because of the cup of coffee that I'm gonna drink, but also I'm talking about safety considerations. And just let me show you some scientific studies, just 3 of them. Of course, there are more, but if you want to read those, you can write to me directly, of course. Just to really understand that, fortunately, we have research on green coffees, especially on the physical characteristics. This specific study was actually considering not only a visual or just a scale, color or based on a scale, but considering chromatic parameters that we use for another food matrices like L, C, and H in this case, lightness, chroma, and the tone angle. Of course, there are more sophisticated nowadays technologies, we know, but this is an example on how probably we need to assess the evaluation or the star. I'm not pretending to have all these let's say sophisticated equipment, because this is let's say in food industry at high levels, having these analyzers or chromatographers, or etc. But definitely we need to have more specific parameters and to understand how they should be measured. That would be the idea. So here they were actually evaluating defective and non-defective coffee beans. Also, they have here blacks, some immatures and sours, and non-defective. They were taking a look again of these parameters to define the color, L, C, and H angle. And this is for roasted. I just put it here because they also the article was talking about that. So they were measuring. You can here compare. In some of them there are no significant difference between some of them, but definitely for, if you consider in the luminosity, of course, and it's clear, but with a parameter, with a number, with a specific value, we have a difference, really high difference between black, for example, and non-defective coffees. In the same study, we have also another attributes, physical attributes that were measured, like density, bulk density as well, crude bean, well, let's say green beans for us, of course, in the same matrices, black, immature, sours, and non-defective. And also they did the study for roasted. So here we can have some differences. Here, this is a mixture of different matrices. Here we have some difference between the black, immature, and sour regarding this density. So we can compare here. Of course, here there is a difference when we have these different two letters. That means that there is a significant difference between the sour and the other black and immature in relation to the bulk density that was measured here. Also, I consider for this presentation, there is a study about that was released in the Journal of Science in 2007, relating some, again, physical-chemical characteristics. They were also considering some matrices or some food matrices like the commercial coffee, the Robusta, cherry, Robusta, cherry, defective, knowing that all these coffee were defective. Also, they have Arabica, same, grade and defective, and others, and they were measuring color, moisture, total solids, and comparing pH with the treatable acidity and how they were related. So the idea of showing you this article is interesting to understand that we also need to consider, or it's not only about putting a sample in a specific instrument to get a number, but also understanding what is happening or why I'm having different numbers. And again, how this is affecting the quality and in the end, the health of us as a consumers. And this is the one that I found more interesting because it related to bioactive compounds. I was in the presentation or in the introduction that Connie was given about me. I was in the olive oil industry for many years, and I was actually studying phenolic compounds in the olive oil and how they were transferring from the olive fruit to the rest of the phases or matrices. And again, it's so interesting because in this specific article, they were studying the low-grade green coffee, right? Also some spent coffee that is related, to roasted, but it's interesting to see. And they were analyzing total solid, the same as the other study, but in this time, chlorogenics and caffeine and total polyphenols. To understand in general chlorogenic esters of specific acid cafe, that is a simple phenolic compound, and also with along with the quinic acid. Of course, we know, and you know as a roaster, that this is one of the main chemical transformations that we have during the roasting. This chlorogenic acids degrade into those. But to understand these kind of phenolic compounds are in the nature and in other food matrices, not only, of course, coffee. If we think about tannins or in wine or flavonoids in tea or other, for us is chlorogenic acid that we consider. And if we have this measurement of, or this having the total polyphenols content, this is an idea of how these compounds are actually could be beneficial. Or actually, this is how I think the name of the article was because it's talking about bioactive compounds. We know in food industry that polyphenols are antioxidants and they are beneficial for health. So in that sense, it's interesting to see how we are actually getting higher content of those, and it makes sense, because when we have more immature beans, that they are higher in this in the immature, not only the coffee fruit, but therefore in the green beans. And of course, if I compare also Arabica with Robusta, and yes, in terms of how not only the total phenolics, but also they were actually studying in terms of trologs. And here, let me show you the radical scavenging activity, that those are measurements about the antioxidant, as you can see, antioxidant activity of all these sources. So definitely it's interesting, and I'm sure, or I know definitely that in Brazil and other countries are performing some studies about this, the quality of the actually getting coffee from green beans. Yes, these extracts could be considered, and again, as I was actually isolating for the olive oil, same, they could be actually used as to enrich other food matrices. What we need to understand is, in the end, how the organism is going to absorb those compounds, but also the safety of those. So this is an article from more than 13 years ago, and there are again too many other, fortunately, regarding these aspects. And yes, we also need to consider this aspect of coffee and health, but definitely related to the safety of us as a consumer. So emphasizing, finishing with that, considering that coffee is part of the food industry, but it sounds like, yes, like a pretty obvious statement, but it's not. Unfortunately, when you go to different farms or small farms, and you see that they are not even clean, or how they are processing the coffee is not really not meeting the minimum standards, or how really not too many are considered industry. The farm is not considered as an industry, and therefore they are not applying quality control. They probably they don't even know what is HACCP, etc. Other aspects that we need to consider in the food industry. That'll be the issue, or let's say that this is the starting point to understand coffee is food. And if we understand now that, we need to definitely understand whether we need to consider in the green coffee evaluation. We are, I think, in a critical point of processing, and therefore in the how the raw material, this green coffee bean is given to the roasters. Yes, this physical evaluation is not, of course, those are some parameters that I was mentioning at the beginning. Being science and chef, absolutely, according to the regulations in origin. But we need to think about odor and color, not color just looking at the coffee, but also considering some chromatic parameters. Probably this could be one of the references. Moisture content, yes, let's say that on this, this is the reference for coffee, and we understand that, fortunately, and we have these range from 10 to 12, as we know, for the specialty, the SCA standard specialty coffee. Water activity, I was also talking about that. I do think we need to evaluate again the value that is now in the current standards, and probably that's also or Peter can give more thoughts about that. Probably it's already included in the new review about these standards. We have different ways also to assess the water activity, or to measure those. And as with what we know in the industry in this century, especially I would say in the last years, we know that 0.45 to 0.55 is actually what roasters are asking for many specialty coffees. Not all of them, or most of the times, if there is producers don't have access to measure these parameters, this is evaluated when the coffee is already in the consuming countries. Probably you can give the producers some advices to control the processes again, but definitely this is what now is in below or equal to 0.7, to something to analyze definitely. Yes, of course, all TA is controlled, and we know that. Remember that we need to understand which if we are thinking about Europe or Asia, thinking about Japan, or even here more close to me, Chile, their internal regulations. Remember that we have a specific reference numbers for roasted coffee, but we have standards for green coffee. We know that we cannot, and this is the number that we have, 15 ppb parts per billion as the maximum that we can have in green coffee, but many of your clients actually can ask for not only having these numbers in roasted coffee, because we know that during the roast also some losses are of these OTA or OTA, sorry, in Spanish I would say, ochratoxin 8, that is actually the one that we need to consider as, and we have been considering that as been in the green. But nowadays, we need to correlate this, of course, with the capping, and this is our next topic with Peter Giuliano, the capping as a tool for green coffee, for the assessment of green coffee. And if this is the raw material, how are we considered the definition of quality, right? And so it's interesting because definitely I cannot say that sensory evaluation is the last word, or that's my starting point to define a contract. No, definitely green grading needs to be analyzed by another approach. Well, yes, we have LCA standard for White Arabica specialty coffee. Do we have those for honey? Do we have those for Natula? Do we have those for this other type of processing? So first of all, I do think, and this is part of my discussion when I'm teaching as well, we need definitely international regulation for the current processing methods, so the current processing trends in the current trends in processing. Definitely, probably many times with knowledge, but many others with no knowledge. From the producers, they are just imitating. If in a competition, this carbonic maceration coffee is winning, or this, I don't know, again, all these anaerobic IPA style, etc. Just to name some of these. I'm just not talking about person. I'm just talking about the names that we are getting from the coffees. Yes, some people say, oh yes, I need to do this carbonic maceration. This is what people is going or is interested in. It's more than that. It's not just imitated. It's just not doing what my neighbor is doing. Again, I haven't seen any specific studies related with all these new processing methods, studying the shelf life of the final product, of understanding that the coffee in origin, our final product is the green coffee. Of course, we also roast coffee for local consumption, but let's say that in this regulation that needs to cover all the coffee value chain, this is something that really we need to evaluate. And finally, of course, the study of the potential or beneficial role of, and also studying the health risks of the use of microorganisms. I was not talking about that, but it's definitely there. And when we refer to that, is of course not only the yeast or bacteria that is being studied for Professor Rosan Chuan in Brazil, or Professor Borin in other aspects in drying, etc. But when we are really thinking that we are adding intentionally fungi, or again, yeast, or in this case, also what we call molds, or that is the most recent trend that with this adding risopus, but also using bacteria. this is something that the coffee industry needs to evaluate. These modulated fermentations, I don't know if you can see here, probably no. I prefer to call these modulated fermentations when you are inducing a specific metabolic pathway to modulate the final flavor profile of your product. But again, we haven't evaluate the risk of using these rhizophores or this specific bacteria because we don't have any specific dosification, and especially because we are now, but we are not pusher or by law to actually claim those. Many of these producers right now that have this kind of coffees are saying, yes, everything is okay because I'm saying that I'm not hiding the use of these microorganisms, or I'm not hiding the use of this specific agent. But I do think that somehow we are not following what we should be doing as a food industry. Yes, that will be my contribution. Thank you so much.